3 new school building project forums. This first forum is a regionalization review. I think the purpose of this is to show that before we move forward, we were doing our due diligence and looking at all types of avenues and what would the possibility or feasibility of regionalization look like for West Boylston, and is it something that we think it would be worth pursuing. So Dr. Riley will lead the presentation. He has a bunch of information, and I think it would be best if we go through the presentation first and then field questions at the end, if that's okay with everybody. Sound good? All right, with that, I'll give it to Dr. Riley.
Thanks, Mr. Pedoni. Can we just take 1 second and just go down and introduce ourselves?
Sure. So I will introduce myself. I am James Pedoni, Chair of the School Committee and Vice Chair of the School Building Committee. And before we move on to the rest, I do also want to thank Mr. Bokankowitz for taking care of our technical needs, as this is going to be, or is being, live streamed on our YouTube channel.
David Ashwell, Select Board, School Building Committee, and parent of 2 kids in the school system.
Vanessa Kuzmanovsky, Select Board, and I think I'm the clerk of the School Building Committee.
Yep.
And 2 kids in the school.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. I'm Dan Riley. I'm the Superintendent of Schools, the new Superintendent of Schools. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight and present some information. This group right here is a subgroup of the Town of West Boylston School Building Committee that was appointed by the Select Board. And our job is to collect information for the town on schools, school projects, and also like new school building projects, which was something that we submitted for approval on, and we were accepted in December of 2024 as a town. Renovations and rehab. And so what our role is here tonight is to present information to the community to help you become informed. As a school building committee, our job is not to sell you, if you will, to do something that maybe we think is the best approach. We did put together some information in order to try to give you as much knowledge as you need around these topics, and tonight's focus is regionalization. Part of the reason why regionalization was on our list of forums is because as we came together as a school building committee over the last, I would say, few decades even, as long back as I've heard, regionalization has been a topic of discussion in the town of West Boylston. And so as we were accepted into this new school building project, residents brought back the conversation of regionalization and said, that's something that we want to revisit, we want to know more about. Hence, our role as a school building committee in this sub-panel of the school building committee was to go out, and we worked very hard to get you as much information as we could on that topic, which is what we're going to share tonight. As Mr. Pedoni said, we'll take questions on regionalization at the end of the presentation. We also request, if there are questions that pertain to other aspects, whether it's capital planning or it's the feasibility study itself, we will take those questions down. We have other forums that are dedicated to those specific topics. So if you do have a question that's related to one of the other forum topics, we'll record it, and then when we have that forum, we'll make sure that that question is read at the end and that we provide what answers we can as a school building committee. All right, without further ado, thank you again for being here tonight. I want to take a minute to thank Ryan Aruda, who volunteered his time as a marketing expert to try to help us with some of the presentation. And so some of the visuals that you see back here, Ryan took time and voluntarily created those. So hopefully you like some of the visuals that you see as we go through this presentation and the others. Okay, so let's start with a quick overview of this grade 7 through 12 new school building project. We're going to start every forum off with this overview. So as I said before, West Boylston has been accepted into the eligibility phase by what's called the Massachusetts School Building Authority. It's a grant program that provides the town with an opportunity to receive reimbursement from the state should we pursue and be accepted into building a new school. The eligibility phase started in June of 2025, and it goes through February of 2026. And those tasks that happen throughout eligibility phase include the creation of a school building committee. And let us say this too, that as a school building committee, our feelings on this are that the school building committee stays together and continues to look at the needs of the town, right? That this is not a one-time thing, that our subcommittee is going to stay together and continue to look at these issues and address the needs of our kids in the community. What is happening with part of this process is that the school building committee, as a part of the new school building project in the eligibility phase, is requesting that the town vote on approving a $2 million feasibility study and schematic design at October town meeting, that the town will vote to put that on a ballot sometime in December. And Heather, correct me if I'm wrong in my timelines, but I've been listening, so I think I got them buttoned down. What also happens during the eligibility phase, if that feasibility study is approved at town meeting, is we will look at aspects like hiring what's called an owner's project manager, a person that will oversee all aspects of the project moving forward. Contracting with a designer to produce a full schematic design of this, in theory, new 7 to 12 school building. Doing environmental and site testing and other contingency-related expenses that might come up as a result of looking at building a new school. It's important to know this, that being accepted into the eligibility phase, and even if the town votes to approve a feasibility study, it does not mean yet that MSBA has approved us to build a new school and receive a reimbursement. So this is just the initial eligibility part of the process. And as I mentioned before, we have a number of forums planned to address different issues that have been brought to us by the community. Tonight's is focused on regionalization review. Capital planning review will happen on October 9th, and that is at 6 p.m. And my slide is updated, perfect, okay. That's gonna be at 6 p.m. because there's a Thursday night football game that night, so we're gonna go a little earlier. And then October 14th, we're gonna do a walkthrough of Major Edwards at 7 p.m. And then we're coming back over here so that we can record it and provide it to the community to talk about the feasibility vote itself. And that will take place here in the Library Media Center. Our contact is up there, so if you want to reach out to the school building committee. And we also have this fantastic website that we worked really hard to launch in order to provide a one-stop shop for all the information that we've been gathering and information that we'll present tonight and on other nights. So the agenda for tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the benefits, potential benefits of a new school building project for the community. We're going to talk about what regionalization is. We're going to look at what some of the potential benefits of regionalization are for communities. We're going to look at some of the potential downsides of regionalization for the community. We're going to review our neighboring districts, and then we're going to give you our school building committee's analysis of potential regionalization with those neighboring districts. And we're going to talk about the upcoming new school project events as well. Now I know why Jim wore the polo. Okay, so looking at a new school building project, there are defined benefits that other communities that have entered into a new school building project have seen as a result of the project. Safer and healthier learning environment for the kids. Increased energy efficiency with a new building. Enhanced teacher recruitment and retention. Modernized facilities with better technology integration and more flexible learning spaces. Learning more in the 21st century. An increase in property value for residents. Usable space for the community, trying to use a new school building space to really be the center of the community and replicate a lot of what happens now, where you have town meeting right here in the middle high school. And then, of course, because it's a 7 through 12 project, we would be looking at upgraded athletic fields and facilities. So let me give you a little overview of what regionalization is. Regionalization is a collaboration or a partnership and a merger between two or more school districts. Because it's a partnership and a collaboration, it's not the decision of any one school district or one town to regionalize. It's like a marriage, where you agree to go into this together, right? So West Boylston doesn't just decide to regionalize. The communities that we feel we could partner with also have to agree to this. Regionalization in a full aspect takes a multi-year study to accomplish. After that multi-year study, it gets submitted to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and then they have final approval on whether or not the regionalization is in the best interest of students. If we did have a partner or partners, a regionalization plan will take at least 3, but most likely up to 5 years to prepare for an approval vote with the town and with the other towns that we would look at regionalizing with. The reason why it takes so long to complete a full regionalization is because it involves a transfer of assets and the defining of a governance structure. So a lot of those legal aspects take a lot of time to figure out. It doesn't always prove to be successful. So even if a potential regionalization is presented, and the example that we can pull is from the 2023 Southern Berkshire and Berkshire Hills potential partnership. They studied this, and then when it went to vote, the towns voted it down. So they did the years of the study, put it to a vote, and the town said no. So that sometimes happens too, even when you put the work in to regionalize with another partner. If we were to regionalize, what happens is we form a new, what's called regional school committee. And that regional school committee is just what it sounds. It's a school committee that's comprised of folks that represent the region or the multiple districts that are now in partnership together. That regional school committee, depending on what transfer of assets gets legally decided, depending on the governance structure, that regional school committee basically assumes ownership of those assets. An example, Wachusett Regional High School. Wachusett Regional High School is an asset of the Wachusett Regional School Committee. That is not an asset of the town of Holden. So that's kind of defining what that would look like. But in that particular partnership, if you were to look at the Paxton Center School, that's part of the Wachusett Regional District, in their finance plan with that regionalization partnership, the Paxton Center School is still the property of the town of Paxton. So there's different ways to do that in other partnerships. Those elementary schools, if you will, do become part of the assets of the regional school committee. But that's basically what gets worked out with the lawyers when you're looking at what the overall partnership is going to look like. A regional school committee does not operate like one of the town boards, even within the towns that it operates and it serves. So the select board or select boards don't dictate the direction of a regional school committee. The other local boards like FinCom don't dictate the direction of a regional school committee. The school committee with the superintendent determine the budget, and then they put that budget to a vote. If they have a majority of the towns that accept the budget passes. So an example, again, Wachusett Regional District, if 3 of the 5 towns approve the budget goes through. And, you know, that gets set that way. So that's a little different than what we do right now. The residents of those towns, obviously, it's a shared responsibility. The residents of the towns in the regional partnership assume the responsibility for the budget and the debts. New school building projects, for example, within that community, would be debt exclusion that then becomes shared across town. So it's a shared responsibility with multiple communities. I can give you a personal example of how regional budgets work. I live in the town of Rutland, and so we at first did not approve the budget for the Wachusett Regional School District, and so the budget still got passed. So the town of Rutland had to figure out how it was going to still pay for the increased cost of education. It came at the expense of, was going to come at the expense of ambulatory services in town, right? And so the town officials had to get back together and look at that. But that's just a personal example of how regional budgets work. And it is a shared responsibility, but there is a difference in the control factor. There are some known benefits to regionalization partnerships. There is a state reimbursement program towards regional transportation, so sending students on a school bus to a regional school. There is a reimbursement for that. That currently exists within our operating budget as a town. A unified central office structure. That can create a little more linear in terms of the partnership and the communities that are in this shared school district. There is usually a single superintendent that makes decisions for all schools in the regional partnership, so it unifies that central office structure most of the time. There are different models that exist throughout the state where some school districts decide they want to keep an independent superintendent model for maybe it's a pre-K through 8 program, or for example, Lincoln, who's partnered with Hanscom Air Force Base, has a separate superintendent model, even though Lincoln Sudbury is their regional partnership. So there's different ways that towns approach that. But usually it results in a unified central office structure so that there's not a duplication of costs in those leadership positions. Increase in staffing allowances for educational programming. So obviously you're bringing more students together in a single place, more staff, perhaps more offerings. Increased salaries for employees and better recruitment. So employees that become part of a regionalization partnership legally do not lose salary, right? It goes with the higher paying districts, dictate what the salary will, and they have to negotiate that too, obviously, with the unions and the bargaining groups. There can be a potential increase to academic programming. We wanted to emphasize, though, and this was from what's called the Mars Regional Consultant Group that has specifically been working on regionalization partnerships for the last 2 decades in Massachusetts. And what they wanted to just make sure that we were being transparent with the community on is, you know, the increase in academic programming isn't always guaranteed because you're going into a regionalization partnership. The superintendent of schools would, in theory, make the decisions on what programs are offered or not offered. You can have more enrollment and competition for competitive cut sports programs. Again, being a member of the Wachusett Regional School District, I have 2 sons that participate in those sports programs, and they tend to have a lot of interest in the sports because of the large number of students. And then also more enrollment at times, and also more competition for academic accolades and recognition. So a couple of the things, and Mike, I'm sorry because I forgot to move some things on the slide at your request. Mike's also a member of our school building committee. There are some downsides at times to regionalization. One thing that got brought up to us is that sometimes towns, like you look at the Southern Berkshire issue and that falling through, that was tied to something like we're not the Lions anymore, right? And sometimes that plays a role in how people think about these partnerships and whether or not they think that they're a good idea for the community. There's usually not actualized cost savings in regionalization partnerships. They tend to streamline costs, but they don't tend to reduce them. And again, this is just the information that we're receiving from the folks that have helped build these partnerships and then have also observed them in practice following their launch. So it doesn't tend to reduce the cost of education. No governance, as I said before, over the regional school committee can at times become an issue, and I gave you the personal example at being a resident in Rutland. Loss of town assets, sometimes that becomes an issue for voters, where you're looking at, you know, the land or the buildings no longer belong to the town. And then also, fewer students could be making sports teams or receiving academic recognition, because now you're joining a larger group of students. So that's also good to look at, kind of like the flip side of what we saw. It can be a benefit, but it can also be a downside if you're an athlete that doesn't make a sports team. All right, so we took some time, and again, this is public information, so we did our homework because this is what the community was asking for. We looked at neighboring districts, and we tried to generate a thoughtful analysis as your school building committee. First, we looked at Wachusett. It's the largest regionalized partnership in the state, with 5 towns that are currently part of it. It's grades 9 through 12, and it currently enrolls 1,779 students in the school, in the high school. There are 16 school committee members on the Wachusett Regional School Committee. 6 of them are from Holden, which means anytime something goes to vote, the town of Holden, with that design of that governance structure, naturally has the majority of the votes. They're about 38% of votes. Our enrollment falls within what we would say like the 2-member range. And again, that would have to be legally worked out with lawyers and figuring it out if we were to enter into that partnership, what the final number would be. But we kind of mirror the communities now that are part of that partnership that have 2 seats on the school committee. The next partnership we looked at was Tohoto. That is, of course, between Berlin and Boylston. And also for 6 through 12. So in 2025, it's a 6 through 12 program that enrolls 522 students. So they have a middle high school. There's 5 members of the school committee. 3 of them are from Berlin, and 2 of them are from Boylston, which is interesting in this governance structure, because what it is it's a vote. It's a majority vote across towns elect the school committee. So in theory, in this partnership, because Berlin is smaller than Boylston, yet they hold more seats because of the votes, in theory, Berlin could have all 5 seats on the school committee. It's just how the governance structure was built. As West Boylston is about 2 times the population of Berlin, and it's about 1.5 times the population of Boylston. The reason why that's important to mention is because the analysis that's been done by the superintendents that work as consultants to help forge these partnerships and then analyze their success rates, when towns can mirror each other as much as possible, that's when regionalization tends to be more successful. That's when you're not 10 years into the partnership asking for a breakup or divorce, if you will. There's no divorce clause in this regionalization partnership. So once you're in, you're in. But it's important to note that. So we tried to do some analysis on the difference of size of the towns and things like that, just to provide you with more information. Clinton, we also looked at Clinton. Clinton Middle School's enrollment is 573 students. That's about 2.5 times the size of West Boylston. And Clinton High School's enrollment is 582 students, which again is about 2.5 times the size of what we have in West Boylston. 5-member school committee, and again, they have about 2 times the population that we have here in West Boylston and Clinton. With some further data review, we were able to put together an analysis collaboratively as a school building committee. And again, we are stakeholders from across the community. We have membership from FinCom, Select Board, School Committee. We have residents that are part of it. We have stakeholders that hold positions within the school district and within the town. So as shared stakeholders, we came up with an analysis for you as a community. So with Wachusett, with the school building committee, it feels like we might become like a small fish in a big pond, is the analogy that we used. And that might not be the end of the world, but we just wanted to make sure it was pointed out. It doesn't give us a potential solution to our students in grades 6 through 8, because that's a 9 through 12 high school. So in looking at what we currently have for facilities, we would essentially, in theory, maybe be entering into a regionalization partnership, and then we would still be running this building, still be running Major Edwards, because we don't have the capacity to merge all of our students into one of them. So we questioned whether or not that really amounts to a cost savings, and we also said, does that still put us in a position where we still need a new school anyways, right? So those are just some thought-provoking questions that we put together for the community. With Tohoto, and again, public information, we did an analysis of some of their new projects. So if you don't know, Tohoto built a new middle high school back in 2013. They built that middle high school for 560 kids. They have 522 in it, and so they won't be able to fit 461 additional students without some serious renovations. And so we just wanted to make sure that the community was aware of that. Clinton, again, it becomes an issue of room. Clinton's currently building a 4 through 8 middle school. It's planned for 600 students that they currently have enrolled, and there's 700, it's a 700 student capacity building or space. So again, we have 358 students that are in those grade levels. It would be very difficult, I would assume, to fit them into that school that's only really designed for about 100 more students. But again, it's our honest analysis of what we were able to find publicly on these districts. Just for a plug on our upcoming events too, and we're going to get to the questions next. So we have a capital planning review again on the 9th. We're going to do the walkthrough on the 14th, the feasibility vote review on the 14th, and then October 20th, we have the semi-annual town meeting and feasibility vote. That'll be here at the middle high school at 6 p.m. There's our contact, there's our website, and I did update my time on that one. Perfect, okay, great. It's at 6 p.m. here on the 9th. All right, so for those of you who are joining us at home, we created a QR code in order for you to scan and give us some feedback on how this went. For those of you who are here tonight, I'm going to leave that up. We would appreciate some feedback. Our goal is to continue to stay together and serve the needs of the town of West Boylston, right? Our students are currently in buildings. The last renovations that were done to the buildings was 30 years ago. So it's time to figure something out. And we want to stay together as a school building committee to help listen to the town, figure out a plan, figure out where to go. So please provide us with some feedback so that we can be in better service to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. If anybody has any questions, just one at a time, come up to the mic and please state your name and address for the minutes.
Mark Holtzwell, live on Lexington Drive, here in town. My wife and I graduated from here. My kids graduated from here, and I have a grandson in Major Edwards, so we've been around for a while. My question is, one of your slides, you stated that after a study, a regionalization study, the town would submit a plan to, and I believe it was DESE?
Yeah.
Has that ever gotten that far where we actually had a plan that we would submit? I know this has been tried many times in the past, and if it didn't, who kills it? It seems like this always dies in its infancy. It never gets further. I mean, I've been in town for 55 years. I don't ever remember this coming up on a ballot question anywhere. So that's my question.
So, all of that was before all of us. So I got on the school committee. It hasn't been done since. A lot of what brought this is questions from the public have come up just on that about regionalization and why haven't we done it, why hasn't it looked into, and the only answer I could ever give them was I don't really know. There was people that looked at it prior. It never made any traction, and it ended. So more recently, some new school committee members were interested in regionalization as well, and we thought it might be great to get some information to actually be able to answer some questions for the public and what would be entailed. So that's as far as we've gone at this point, is we've met with these consultants because none of us really knew the process or what to do. I think, to answer your questions, I'm not 100% sure, but to get there, we would actually have to start conversations with other school districts and get them to even be interested in moving forward before we get to that piece of it. So I think those things were done prior to me getting on the school committee, but I don't have any other information than that.
So wouldn't it be worth at least pursuing that avenue of talking to these other school districts and maybe coming up with a plan? I mean, is it you guys that say, no, we're not going to do it and that's it, and it never gets any further than that?
Well, I think at this point, based on the information that we have and the likelihood of success, we don't feel that it's an avenue we should be taking at this time. A lot of the reason behind it, as Dr. Riley mentioned, some of these combinations, regardless of what we do, and I think it's very important that you come to that third information session so people can actually see Major Edwards, which is the building we're trying to replace. So just to give everybody a high level, what we want to do is build a 7 through 12 building with upgraded facilities for academics, science labs, gymnasium, athletic fields, all of the newer, I guess, to accommodate a better education for our students now. Because right now, all of the, basically nothing here is of regulation from an athletic perspective. Our science labs are very old and need renovation, need updating. So from an academic standpoint, the building is kind of lacking from that, from a high school perspective. So the idea would be to do some renovations to this middle high and have it become the elementary school, which would be a pre-K through 6, and build a new building that would accommodate today's version of what a 7 through 12 middle high school or junior high school should look like. Did I answer the question? Okay.
I'd like to identify ourselves with
Please.
Mark Frieden, 8 Pinewood Drive, former, or parent of former students from Major Edwards. I would like to wonder if another regionalization concept would be that West Boylston regionalizes and absorbs Tohoto, and part of the building project is to build a school that houses the whole mess. I guess my first question, if we investigate regionalization, does it disqualify the MSBA granting
Yes.
on the building?
So yeah, if you have multiple, please do them one at a time. So,
That was just part of the
okay.
question. Then the
So
other one was-
basically, we were accepted for the design that I just mentioned. Any modification to that basically has us leave the program and resubmit. And to give you an idea, they say that the program takes 5 to 7 years to complete, more likely closer to 8. We're in year 1 of that because of the eligibility period starting. It took us 4 to 5 years to get to this point because we've been submitting for a long time. So I don't know if we would be immediately brought back in or what the case may be. That's up to the MSBA to decide. But any kind of changes to our current plan would basically have us starting over and submitting a new application to them.
Okay, thank you, good answer. My proposal would be just that, you mentioned that Tohoto is, we would, or Wachusett would be a small fish in a big pond. If we went the other way and regionalized with Tohoto and built the new school, maybe the 8 or 10 years makes their investment in their school not be whatever, maybe it runs out by then and they can be part of this school at the time. It was just a way to spread out the money of the construction over 3 towns rather than 1 town. That would be why I would make that
And
proposal.
Mark, I mean, you bring up a good question, and I think what Jim is saying too is that right now where we're at as a community, what's been submitted, the state's reimbursement program requires us to stay the course if we want to complete that project, right? So that's, if we were to start analyzing or studying regionalization, which absolutely could be done, that would send a clear message to the state that we're not pursuing a new building anymore. We would exit the program. And then, as Jim said, we would attempt to survey the landscape of what comes next as a community, and then perhaps resubmit. It can be a process, so it's important too, and the reason why I appreciate your question is, I think some community members might say, hey, we're accepted into this thing, so, let's go a different route, let's build a different type of school. These are things that we've heard as we've been having these conversations with the community along the way. It really is a very narrow tunnel that MSBA gives us to navigate right now. So, as Jim said, absolutely, like we can always study a regionalization partnership. It would put a stop to this process, and then we would have to evaluate what comes next as a community, if that makes sense. Thank you.
If you do attend the capital planning meeting, I believe there are some slides in that presentation that point out some of the larger school districts, simply just based on student population. So to your point about trying to spread the cost out across multiple towns, that might give you a better idea of the ratio of students to school costs. We don't have them included in this one, but it's not always quite as linear as it might seem. There's always more
I look
factors.
forward to those. And I just also want to thank you for providing the presentation ahead of time so I could look through it
Yeah,
before the meeting. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. You're welcome.
So I just wanted to touch on one other thing that no one's really specifically asked yet, but a lot of this, there is a strong need currently with the occupancy of the elementary school. Our class sizes are larger than we would like. There is no room feasibly to add classrooms for. We have currently 3 grades that are over what we would feel is a adequate capacity. And we're not trying to rush anything. The thing is that we've been accepted into this program. We do have a pretty desire, or a burning desire, a high need to get a new building, no matter what it is, to at least address some of the other concerns with the elementary school. This building would be very adequate for them, although there would be some renovations that this building needs regardless, and there would be renovations that would be needed to make it an elementary school, which I believe, David, that's in the capital. There's more detail on that in the capital presentation as well. But the biggest concern would be if we leave the program and spend 3 to 5 years going through regionalization efforts and it fails, then we've lost all that time. Then we have to then resubmit to go where we are now and then start the whole 5 to 7 to 8 year cycle again. And by then, costs have gone way up. We're also at a point now where the current reimbursement rate is around 57% of reimbursable costs from the state. We don't know what our number would be. We won't know that until the feasibility study is done, but it should be in that ballpark. Additional, could you just come on up?
Mary Ambrose, I live at 3 Lincoln Avenue. A couple questions. Why did it take so long for us to finally get it accepted to start with for this eligibility? And the second thing is, our graduation class is pretty small. How do we, and our kids need a new school, totally, but how do we get that to be, was our graduation 50 this year?
This year was one of the smaller ones. It was in the 50s, but we've had, ranging between 60 and 70 is the norm. That's been the norm for quite some time.
I would note too that nationwide, so if you look at nationwide numbers in college enrollment, for example, they're hitting a bit of a cliff in enrollment, and that sort of tails back to the 2008 Great Financial Crisis. Essentially, families had fewer children in the 4-ish years from 2008 to 12. So nationwide, you actually see a dip in population and then that age bracket. And then as you come out of that recession period into the mid-teens, the number of children being born goes back up. So part of that dip is just nationwide demographics. And to Jim's point, we've got several classes that are pushing 78 wide, if you will, on third grade, fourth grade, and kindergarten. I forget the exact ones now, or first grade.
First, third, and fourth. First,
Yeah.
third, and fourth.
So, there's definitely variance, but we definitely have some fairly heavy classes coming up through the system that, trying to get ahead of it now, hopefully makes it so by the time you get to the high school age, they're still not bursting at the seams.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
And the answer to your question is why is it took so long is we did start this many years ago. We did a study. We hired a consulting firm to look at a lot of different aspects of what should the building be. They did come out with a new 6 through 12. The school committee had taken a vote at the time to modify it to make it a 7 through 12, just because we feel that this building would be adequate for a pre-K through 6, and a 7 through 12 is a good compromisation of students. Some parents don't really like having sixth graders in the same buildings as seniors, right? So it kind of, we make it work here. There isn't a lot of overlap, but, ideally, we would kind of make it a little bit smaller. That would actually save in some costs. And the other reason why it took so long is because it just took that long for the state to accept us. So we submitted multiple times, and there was a lot of submissions that went on. There was 3 criteria. There was building need, academics, and there was, do you remember the other one? So there's three primary criteria the state used. I don't remember all of them, and unfortunately, we weren't as bad as many other towns in the state. When we first met with them in 2023 to be considered, there was 60, I guess, schools at that point that had interviews, and they selected 20 of them. They then instructed us to resubmit the following year with some modifications. They didn't know about our plans to change this building into an elementary school. The form didn't accept that kind of input, so when we were, after having the meeting, they were able to allow us to resubmit where we could provide all that input, and we were then accepted the following year.
First of all, you're so far away, and we can't see that, so why are we so far away? It feels, but I'm Kathy Hookway, and I've lived in West Boylston for 35 years. My kids went to school here. It sounds like you've made up your mind, just as an outsider coming in. It sounds like that you don't want to lose your spot in this, but it costs $2 million, did I hear that correctly, for a feasibility study? Is that what? Was that correct? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what we're asking for, because that's about the average of what towns can expect to spend on those.
So really, when we're talking about regionalization, you've sort of ruled it out, it sounds like. So you're saying because you don't want to mess up this, this opportunity because they've accepted you into the program, into the eligibility phase. So, but why can't you informally, because I've done some history about the school system, and the reason we've never regionalized is because other towns did not want us. Everybody wants power. So like I remember, this was way back before the 60s, that in looking at the history of the school system, that like Sterling, we wanted to regionalize with Sterling, but Sterling wanted to go to Wachusett. And so I think that even informally, if you ask these towns if they would regionalize with us, I don't know what that would be. And so it would be worth it if to informally asking, because it would be a lot cheaper, wouldn't it, to regionalize? No, you're saying no, it would not.
Yeah, there's so many stakeholders that are involved in that process. And so to answer your question too, though, we're not coming here presenting it as an agenda. Like, we're not trying to sell the community on this is what you absolutely need to do, or, there's no other options. That's why we've tried to pull all this information together. In order to engage another community in a regionalization partnership, it would be a formal engagement of all of their stakeholders. So I'll give you an example. If I were to call Tohoto and talk to the superintendent of schools there and say, hey, do you want to regionalize with us? and that person says, yeah, that'd be a great idea, right? And Heather hasn't spoken to the town administrator over in Tohoto. Maybe the town administrator, who's been there for a lot longer than the superintendent, has completely different feelings on the matter, right? So they do recommend that if you're gonna engage another community in a regionalization,
Do it in a
the-
formal
do it
way.
in a formal way so that you're not excluding stakeholders who then interpret that process to be hiding things, right? Like, why wasn't the parents informed that there were discussions happening between elected officials on a regionalization partnership? Those are the types of things that doing a formal study and evaluation help you avoid, those
I
pitfalls.
can understand that too, but I also understand back roads, like, why would we even go to Wachusett if we already know they're not interested in Little West Boylston? But, like, as a superintendent, I mean, superintendents could talk about this. Are they fiscally thinking of updating, upgrading their schools, building schools? Mary is correct. We have such a low population. To spend millions and millions of dollars, just $2 million for the feasibility study to rebuild this school, and we all want our, I mean, the town has, the smallness is its strength, but also its anchor, because it can't, we can't get around it. It's very difficult. So I do feel like this is a really intractable problem that's come up repeatedly. So it's interesting, but it does sound like all four of you have made the decision, sort of.
I want to clarify one thing too, though. You had mentioned that it would be, in essence, cheaper to regionalize.
I don't know.
Right, it's actually not, unfortunately. It's really going to be, we'd be joining forces. We might have more resources potentially, but the cost itself, those are driven by the other towns, really. We would be one of the smaller towns, and they would be the ones deciding, this is the budget. And then we have no say, potentially, in what the budget is. And then us as a town now have to go in front of the, town meeting and say, I'm sorry, this is what the school decided. And so now we have to come up with these funds.
But they do, I know in Wachusett region, they do make it proportional to your population. So they, I mean, it's not totally unfair. But I do feel like it, I don't know if have you gotten any nibbles? Anybody want Westport? Why are we going down the road of even thinking about it?
Folks won't engage us in those conversations because they don't make those decisions. Like, as a superintendent calling another superintendent, the other superintendent is going to say, I don't make that decision. Like, thank you for asking, but that's bigger than any one role. So it really should be done formally.
Just one more comment, Chris, before, and then it wasn't that we so made up our mind. We were really using this as we need to do our due diligence and get some information and see if it's worthwhile going down, and the lack of options and the lack of success and, the very small potential that's not really weighted for advantages didn't seem that it outweighed continuing our current path. And I think that was the point of this information session, is so that people could understand the pros and cons, understand that we have looked at this as an option, and we want to make sure that we're doing the best for the community and for the students, as a whole. But it seems like continuing our current path makes the most sense at this time.
I just want to add one more thing to that, too. Even though it might sound like, we're stuck here, we're not really. I mean, maybe those things could have been explored years ago, but here we are in 2025, and this is what was presented to us. We're given this, the state's going to reimburse us this huge amount. It's kind of like, why would we not investigate it? Why wouldn't we present it to the town, see what you guys want to do, see if it is something that we should be doing? It's up to you, essentially. It's not us. We're giving you the data. We're telling you these are the facts. This is why regionalization might work, might not. But this is where we are now, so we can't necessarily go back in time.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for all the hard work you've done, and to all the folks on your committee, too. I think I know it's a very, very involved process. To some of the earlier points, though, I guess one of the questions I have is, if we, because I'm just hearing everything again a lot for the first time, and I'm hearing the regionalization thing, and I'm just saying, okay, we really haven't explored as Dr. Riley pointed out, down that route with any one town, we really would need to do that. Let's just say that we do, let's say we're going to do that, and we abandon the school building award that we've been placed, or our placeholder there. We go out 9 months and we said, no, this just isn't going to work. We would say, and I'm thinking Wachusett, because Wachusett I know has openings. This would be a great marriage. It's not going to work. If we go back to the school building group at that time, they've already identified that we meet a lot of the criteria. Do we just lose a year, or are we going to be back into it depends on how many schools, how many communities have put in, and it could be 5 years. So, I mean, I guess that's my question.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's definitely the latter. MSBA really tries to be thoughtful about not making commitments to communities, even in looking at different projects and asking what kind of flexibility we could have as a community. And again, because a lot of us came into this project and we're trying to manage it and present it to the community so the community can make an informed decision on this particular project. But they don't make commitments like that, unfortunately, even though we've been accepted in. It could be quick, like we could submit and they could say, yep, you're back in. If there's a new project, new scope of work, and they agree, but it's a whole statewide sort of applications coming in from across the state, so they have to weigh it against all the other needs, and they have to make the determination, West Boylston needs it more than all the other projects at this time, and they just try to be very clear that can change from year to year. It can change in the midst of a process. So like even as I said, full disclosure, disclaimer, right? We're in this part of the process. They want us to be very clear with the community. It does not mean that they're going to reimburse us for a new school, right? We're just exploring it right now. So we could do all this exploration and they could say, yeah, you know what? Something came up and West Boylston kind of just fell off the list, but we'd love for you to resubmit and look at it. That happens with towns. Worcester just had a recent setback in one of their school building projects. So unfortunately, they don't make those kind of commitments because it would certainly make this process as a town and thinking through what the options are a lot easier. Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any statistics on 400-student public high schools, and are any other towns building small high schools? Or do they regionalize or somehow, want to get to the bigger student bodies for more programs or something like that? Are there any statistics on that? And then you mentioned about something like a cliff, so there's less students now, but now we're in a new thing where students may want to go to Voc more, or a vocational school or something like that. Is that incorporated in the plan? I mean, maybe 400 students is now, and it goes up, but then, maybe a lot of students, option out and go to a different place. I mean, kids went from here to Tohoto, okay. Just the statistics on small schools and then on vocational school options in the future.
What we tried to do, so to your first question, and it ties more to our capital planning presentation, we did do an analysis back 5-6 years in the state of all new school building projects. So that would give you a little clearer idea of exactly who's building from that forum. And then the second question, I'm sorry, what was that? Can you just ask that one more time?
About like a student body in general, and some students not coming to this school, instead going to the vocational school or to another option, another avenue.
Got it now. Is your question can you just stay up there for 1 sec? Is your question pertaining to the new schools supporting those types of programs? Is that what you're asking?
That would be interesting, but it was more about the student body you're building for.
Yep.
Are you planning for growth? Are you planning for smaller? That sort of thing.
Gotcha.
And then there was another one. Oh, this school, if it's sized for, like you said, one of them was building a 700-student school for 600 students. Are we going to build big like that? Maybe Tohonto's going to age out of their building in, 15 years, and we have this building that's only 8 years old or something like that at that point. could we expand that building and then regionalize with them? Is that anything part of a program?
All right, so
Or a
now,
thought?
now I know what you're asking. So when MSBA supports a town in building something, they want it to be really close to what you need, right? So they don't offer, for example, like a larger reimbursement to say, hey, you know what, we're gonna plan ahead. We feel like West Boylston's gonna be booming. I mean, if our enrollment projections, which is what is part of the process we're going through now with them, if those dictate that we're gonna need a much larger school, then they will consider it for reimbursable costs, they call it. If those enrollments don't demonstrate that much growth, then they will reimburse us for what square footage they think we need, right? So it's kind of like the layout of the school. If they say, from our perspective, with your enrollment projections, West Boylston needs a school that's going to support 600 kids, right? And there's probably a little latitude that goes above what those exact numbers look like. We will reimburse you for spacing that will support the 600 kids. If you as a town decide you want to build a 1,000-student school, that other space you pay for, right? So that's how that works with them. And it really is, it's a layout that that the town works with and creates walls that separate that space and makes the right number of classrooms within that space. That's kind of how that program works.
So a proposition there would be build the school so that it's got a place where you could add a wing, or it's like made it so that it's not jammed into the edge of a property. It's in the middle of a property, so you could add something on the sides or something.
Sure,
I mean,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
could we go that way so
Plan
that
ahead.
I'm just looking for the future and then making sure that we can do something later so we don't do this again, you know?
No, they're all
and
great
maybe be
thoughts.
able to expand into regionalization later, because, I mean, everybody's gonna, like you said, it's like a marriage. They're gonna, whatever, grow apart. I don't know.
Those would be elements that we would hope to see from a feasibility study and that kind of, sure, whether just, and maybe it would be for regionalization efforts later on down the road, maybe it would just be for, should we ever need to add a wing to the building or whatnot, that could be all information that you could look at within the scope of that study. Is the study's not just for the physical building, but it's the whole education program that you're putting inside that building, so it's kind of a multifaceted thing.
And one more thing to add, Mark, is that, you know, to adjust to the question about the size of the classes at the high school level, is ideally with a new modern building with everything kind of updated and stuff might actually be more attractive for people than they would stay here, right? So ideally, we would lose less. Not to mention that there is some growth going on, and we can look at what's going on at the elementary school as far as their numbers. And if we can continue that going forward, we can hopefully retain students here, which saves the town money. Well, essentially, we actually have, we're running pretty lean from a teacher capacity right now. However, we have, in the middle high school area specifically, we have room where we could add students without having to add additional costs, right? So it wouldn't be like just because we have more students, now we need to hire more teachers. But in addition, if someone leaves, for example, for a school choice to go somewhere else, we pay currently $5,000 for that student to leave. If someone goes to a vocational school, we pay 10 to 12 currently with our agreement with Leominster CTEI, which is actually a huge savings over the 17 we used to pay for Assabet. So, there's a cost for students leaving, so being able to retain them, which is a school committee goal, would really help, I guess, lower some of the town's costs.
Ray Burkall, Prescott Street. First of all, I just wanted to reiterate what Chris said. These public outreach sessions, I think, are really critical. It's a big ask of the town, and we really need to get the message out so people understand what they're voting for or against, or whatever questions they may have at town meeting. So thank you for putting this all together, and for separating it out by concept. So we have 3 nights, 3 independent pieces. So as time has gone on, we've had studies. So we've had the Collier study that talks about deficiencies in the buildings. We've got an ADA compliance study that talks about deficiencies from an access perspective. So we're going to town meeting, we're going to be asking citizens to vote on this. And I think what's really important for people to hear, and I haven't heard this spelled out very clearly, is what is driving the immediacy of the need? So why now? Now, understood, the state offer expires in February if we don't have something together. But what is at the root of what's driving these changes? And for any of these options that we're looking at, my understanding is it's 5 to 7 years, no matter what path we take. So how does that 5 to 7 year timeline interact with the immediacy of the need right now? And what are those key needs that really have to be addressed? So it's a big question. I'll sit down. Good luck with that one.
Sure, yeah. I think, and thank you, Ray, for that question. You know, that's exactly why we're doing this, right, is so that the town has the information it needs to assess the immediacy. I mean, I will say as superintendent of schools, our kids need better than what they have right now. There's no sugarcoating or beating around that. It's not adequate for what the kids need. And that would be my reasoning as the superintendent, is to say that all of our students have adequate learning spaces that are appropriate and that are preparing them for what comes next. But that's my personal reasons in my role, right? And again, I think the reason why we've prepared all this information is for you as informed residents to then make that decision as well too, to say, is there an agreement on that? Is there not an agreement on that? You know, with whether this project or anything else, I'm not going away. I came into this district with a commitment to the kids, and we need to figure something out for them very soon. So that's where I'm going to be, is advocating for those things with you as a community and trying to provide you with transparent, honest information so that you can make informed decisions, and that hopefully you realize that that need is there as well. So,
Just to
thank
add
you
to
for the
that,
question, Ray.
also, and we're going to be talking about this during the capital improvement session, but just for the immediate need, I mean, there's so many things physically in need at Major Edwards and here. So it's, you know, do we invest the money and fix those things up? Or do we invest in a new building? You know, again, come to that information session and hear about that and ask those questions. But along with that, the other two major immediate needs are the elementary class sizes and the ADA compliance that we're not meeting.
And I would just want to add that it's not now, it's 5+ years ago. It took us this long to get here. So it isn't a matter of why now, it's a how come we couldn't get there many years ago. Unfortunately, we couldn't. This was, you know, many years of work, multiple superintendents, multiple school committees, trying to get to this point, multiple studies, and we were accepted. So now it's, I guess, our turn, really, and that's the way I look at it.
All right, Mark Hopewell again. I feel the same way I think it was Kathy and Ray feel. I feel like I've walked into a car dealership, and the guy says, well, I'll give you $1,000 off the car, but only if you sign the papers today. It seems like you guys have already made up your mind, you've already put the grant in, now you're kind of holding it over us, that, hey, we're going to lose this if we don't pursue regionalization. And I'd like to make a recommendation, I don't know if it's possible, maybe Heather can answer it, is put a question on the ballot in June, the townwide ballot, asking townspeople, everybody in the town, what do you feel about regionalization? Instead of a group of 5 people making the decision, ask the townspeople what they think.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify that this committee does not have a vote in that. We are an information gathering source, but we don't get to move that needle. So just to be clear, that decision process that you're suggesting we make, there is no decision or lever for me to pull.
Put a question on the ballot, let the townspeople.
Can I say one thing to that as well too? And it's in fairness to your entire town. So coming in as your new superintendent, right, this is already in the pipeline, okay? I don't think it's my job to pull something off the table without the town voting on it, right? To come in and say, nope, we're not going to do that. that, I think, too, is what you also have to realize about our school building committee's agenda. It's not to say you have to do this and that we've decided you have to do this. It's to give you the information you need as a town to make the decision for yourselves, right? That's what we want to see happen. None of us feel that it's appropriate for anybody on the school building committee to say, this process stops, we're exiting MSBA, we're not going forward. We don't feel that that's fair to the town either. So that's the other side of it too, is there are residents in town who have expressed that they really want this project for the kids. And it's only fair that the town does come together informed and vote on the project.
John Owenissian, Stillwater Heights. First I want to give you credit for scheduling an event to compete with a Red Sox game. So I know that.
Had we known.
That took a lot of personal courage on your part. I know
No,
these.
no, it's your point, but a Sox game against the Yankees nonetheless.
You're right. I'm not going to reveal the score either. But one thing I want to point out is I moved to West Boylston from Worcester about 20 years ago, and the primary reason at that time for my family was I wanted to get into a smaller school district. So I think really the value proposition for West Boylston is for having this small independent school district. And I read through your presentation. It does build a case against regionalization, the complexity of that. But I think what might be more effective is there may be a mistaken perception that regionalization is a free ride and is cost-free. I know in your presentation you put, quote, there are no actualized savings. But if you look at the Mass Department of Education website, for all of those regional school districts, the per pupil cost is lower. But what's clear from your presentation is all of those three potential regionalized districts, in each case, they'd have to build an additional building. So with that is cost. So I think you're in a delicate position because you can't really negotiate with the regions without jeopardizing your agreement with Mass Building. But I think you could at least put a dollar estimate into, people are going to perceive that, oh yeah, we can go into regionalization and save hundreds of millions of dollars down the road. But in each of those cases, if I'm not mistaken, that involves putting up new buildings for those regions. Where are those dollars going to come from? So I think there is a cost associated, a startup with regionalization, a loss of autonomy. I think even with an informal arrangement, you could at least do a ballpark analysis of what those costs would be for those regions to put up a new building, and then who's going to pay for that? I suspect it would be West Boylston taxpayers. So there's really no free ride with regionalization. Thank you, and thanks for having these sessions. I think it helps to answer many questions prior to the town meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, Kate Carroll, 13 Henry. I have a question about the process. So if as a town we agree to do the $2 million study, but then we get kicked out, how good is that study good for? How long? Like how many years? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so if you guys have to reapply,
Gotcha.
because that's a lot of money. I'm not saying
So
it's not, but
if the
it's,
town says yes to feasibility, and then, and also in our capital planning presentation, we have tried very hard to estimate debt exclusion amounts and to look at that for the community, because that's another question we were presented with. But if we approve the feasibility study,
Yep.
if we do not move forward with the new school building project, let's say the debt exclusion is too high, the feasibility study is not useful for any future projects. We would have to do another feasibility study if we were to submit for a different project. Did I hear you correctly? Did I answer that?
then what happens, because you said the state can kick us out of the process at any point, right? If somebody's deemed to have higher need than West Boylston.
Yeah.
Does that also mean that if we were in the process of having a study done or had this, or it was completed, and then we were deemed to not have as high a need, does that also nullify the study that's been done? That's,
Well, let me
you're
just,
saying that if we withdraw from the process, the study becomes null. But
Yeah.
if we're removed not by our choice from the process, does
Yeah.
the study become null?
So, well, let me put the Worcester example back on the table. Okay, so they were delayed, they weren't necessarily removed.
Okay,
I think MSBA probably tries to be very thoughtful before it just says you're out.
yep,
I certainly feel that if we were to do a full regionalization study, that would send a signal to them that maybe as a community, we haven't completely figured this out yet.
sure.
It's a lot of money, there's other projects, so that thinking might go into play. But if it's something that comes up that is not a major issue, I would imagine the feasibility study could move forward if we as a town are still moving forward.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah, that makes sense. I just, do we lose that money, that investment? Because I know it's going to be a big ask from the town who, I don't, if you've ever been to West Boylston Town Meeting, they don't want to spend money. is
Sure,
the
no,
impression
I came in May, just, I came early before
Yeah.
I wanted to know what I was signing up for, no.
so
yeah.
Dan, I just wanted, I think
go ahead,
that
Jim.
I don't think that we'll get kicked out, correct me if I'm wrong, from a need perspective, I think they already identified that. I think
need-
the only time we might get kicked out is if the feasibility comes back, like, out of control.
Okay.
And then if there are delays, I think as long as we don't, go off the path that we're currently on, the feasibility study will
Sure.
probably be
Yeah.
accurate. And we will be contracting with a firm, so we could be looking at maybe change orders or things like that to minimize the cost of going forward if things had to like change or be altered in a small way.
Yeah,
Right.
but like, as long as we're kind of in good faith moving forward, we don't have to worry about necessarily losing the investment in that study.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's safe to say the only way we lose the investment is if we do it
If
and
we
then
go
do
a-
nothing.
Right, if we take a 90-degree turn and go
Yeah.
some
Right.
other way. Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the feasibility study. Is that to be completed by February?
No,
Okay.
so part of Module 1, which we're in, is a 9-month process with many different deliverables, and one of the deliverables is securing funds for the feasibility study. The feasibility study is the next module. Is what,
Usually
eight-
takes
eight
about a
modules?
year after you initiate with a firm to come in and do it. It takes about a year.
No. That's the next module. So
Yeah,
what we're
it's-
doing is trying to do all the pre-work and fund the next module.
Yeah.
Maura Johnson on Bunker Hill Parkway. Mine is more of a comment, and it's probably gonna go to the next forum. I think it's really important to show to our town what you lose when you don't do something. So tonight, we're talking 2 paths of regionalization or your building. There's that third option, and we've already talked about it, and we've shown it in towns, of nothing. We vote everything down. We vote down feasibility study, we vote down buildings. We just live with what we have and kick it down the road. So this is my ask of you, in the next meetings, have a slide that says, this is what the world looks like with option 3 when you vote down everything.
Yeah, we have some, I think, pretty impactful visuals
Okay?
to share with the community in that capital planning forum.
Good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you.
It's Mary again. I'm gonna go along what she says. I would love to see or hear how bad things are at the school.
Sure.
I mean, you summarize it, but I don't know in detail how bad it is. I can imagine, and I think that would sell your project really well, too.
Yeah, that's part of our capital planning
Okay.
forum. In that presentation, we actually took you through both buildings and the needs of both buildings. And as Mr. Benoni mentioned, we had a study that was done back in 2021, 2022, that went through the buildings and identified what was needed immediately as a result of roughly 25 years of not keeping up with maintenance and the repair needs.
I would start with your program with that. I think if somebody sees how bad things are, I mean, it's gonna rattle everybody, I would hope, right?
Yeah, no, I also agree. I think it would be tough if we sat here and did all 3 presentations at one time, because you might fall asleep, first of all. But also, like, the questions would just, it would be a very long presentation. So I think we broke it up. It's really hard to, like, not answer some of these questions, because, like, it's coming up, like, in chapter 2 and chapter 3. So stay tuned.
Yeah, I did half jokingly ask if we should have bingo cards to identify all the insufficiencies in the buildings when we walk through. I might be pushing more for those bingo cards to be handed out, and you can find all the spots where things need repaired. And if you get bingo, we'll take that as a vote for yes. Thank you.
Hi, Stephanie Rudzinski, 87 Shrewsbury Street. Thank you all for this information tonight. It's been super helpful. I have three little girls. My husband and I moved to town less than 2 years ago. We moved here from Shrewsbury looking for a smaller town, and I think, as someone said earlier, that there's a lot of value in West Boylston because of that small town vibe, small town feeling. But my oldest is in 2nd grade, and I have 2 coming up, and we definitely need a new school. I'm totally here for that. I guess my question is, because I was very much wondering what the sort of hubbub was about regionalization, like, you know, reading about everyone on Facebook, go join this and join that and do this and do that. So I was helpful, this information was super helpful for me for tonight, but I guess my question is, I'm actually, you know, we looked at living in Sterling, we looked at living in Holden, but we didn't want our kids to go to Wachusett eventually. But I'm sort of wondering, like, I'm seeing and I'm hearing that even though the costs to go regionalize would be the same, there's no savings. Okay, fine, I get that. I'm hearing that there's eventually going to be another building at some point, whether we regionalize or not. But my question, I guess, is sort of, and again, this might be a little bit more towards capital planning, so I'm sorry, I'm trying to muddle my thoughts through this. But I guess my question is, what is, like, I'm sort of seeing the benefits of regionalization in the fact that, like, the budget every year has been a fight, and we've been laying off teachers, and we've laid off paras, and our class sizes are huge, and I'm wondering if I even want to keep my kids in the middle high school in West Boylston when the time comes because of the things that I'm hearing. And I'm just wondering if every year is going to be a fight for the budget to support our students and our teachers. Why wouldn't we entertain regionalizing with more districts where we can all pool resources together, right? Do I want my kids to go to Wachusett? No, I moved here instead. But, you know, if they're going to be able to support my kids and not cut because we can't get a budget passed, and I just feel like we're now going to enter in this multi-million-dollar process of a new building, but are there going to be teachers to teach the students in the classroom? I guess is my sort of multi-layered question. If you can
I
find
don't
it.
really have an answer for that, but I just wanted to let everyone know that we have a new superintendent with new ideas and ambition, and I have faith in him, and I think that we should just wait and see just a little bit, because I think that things will be changing.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify a couple of the points you made as far as budget, and I think from a couple of the bullet points on the slides, the teacher salaries would most likely increase if we regionalized, because we have to go with the highest contract, right? Yes. So no teacher can get less money out of regionalizing. So if we were lower than a school district we go and regionalize with, then that adds a cost to our, I guess, budget. The other piece of it is talking about the fighting in the towns and everything else is like this. What Dr. Rowley had said earlier in regards to how a budget gets passed is the regional school committee creates the budget. It goes to town meeting, and let's just use Tohoto as an example. Let's say that currently we're roughly 15 million, I think was 15 and change was the town appropriation towards this current year's school budget. If we regionalized with Tohoto and our portion was 20 million and nothing else changed in town, our portion was 20 million, those two towns pass it, we don't pass it, we're on the hook for 20 million. So now we have to make all of the other services work in a town for whatever is left. So it shifts the fight. It doesn't address the need. I do think that I would agree with you. The school budget needs an increase. People have this misconception that we're wasteful and we're not using money appropriately. I would argue and disagree with them because I've been on the school committee for 13 years now, and I've been entrenched in the budget the entire time. And we get, moderate increases, way less than inflation. We have a large number of costs that are outside of our control, either state mandated, very little funding from the state in some of these, some of them no funding, and contractual obligations. So we're doing everything we can to make the money that we get from the town and from the state go as far as we possibly can. So you're absolutely correct. We need more. And I think we need to just come together as a community to understand that and figure out a way to increase, the town's appropriation to the school without losing any other services. And there's a trade-off for all of that.
Hi, Christine Biscotti, 18 Ave. Sorry if I missed this in the beginning, but have you already decided on a firm that's going to do the feasibility study? And if not, how will that be selected?
No, we haven't gotten to that point yet, and that's a bid process.
Yeah, it has to go out to bid, and MSBA has a list of providers that can provide that service to the community, and it gets decided like any other large allocation of funding, municipal funding. There's a requirement to put it out to bid and to make a decision that way.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mark. If you have a question, ask.
Get them all out.
It's not really a question,
We can put in,
It's a
nickel
question.
jar.
It's $5 a question, too, you know that, right?
put on my tab.
Yeah, here.
My thing is about the balance you have to make with regionalization, because I don't think that it's appropriate to join Wachusett. I think that'd be horrible for the town. But I think that there might be a balance, because I think you have to get up to some, the only reason I would advocate for it is to get to some, like I call it like a critical mass or something like that, where you have enough students to have the programs you're looking for, maybe bring some, I don't know, some programs in because you have enough students to value them or something like that. I mean, like, I just think with a smaller class, you have trouble with that because there's just not enough, you spread it too thin. But if you can get up, I mean, I think Tohonto's a nice, group. Then we would be the big fish in that pond and we would say what the budget is, and it's not a problem with that decision.
So you just hit the nail on the head. That might be why they wouldn't want us.
Is what?
That might be why they wouldn't want us.
Well,
They both have to agree, right? I mean, this
So
is
that's
a
why-
complicated process. That's
so
what we're
why we
trying
have
to
make
show
a
to
plan,
everybody.
I guess, for an expandable building, maybe. Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Any others? All right. If not, I would like to thank everybody for coming. Appreciate all your attendance and hope to see you at future information sessions as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.